I remember the exact moment I saw their faces again, after years of silence. The same faces that once told me I was a disappointment, that I'd never amount to anything, that no one would ever love me enough to marry me. They stood there, mouths hanging open, staring at my brand new Porsche 911 Turbo S, a car that cost more than their entire house. And suddenly, after all those years of being ignored, I was family again. It was almost funny if it hadn't hurt so much. I mean, imagine your own parents skipping your wedding because they didn't approve of your life choices, and then turning up out of nowhere when they see you've made it big. Tell me, would you forgive them? Because I still don't know if I did the right thing. Maybe you can tell me if I was wrong. To understand how I got to that moment, the shiny car, the fake smiles, and the ache in my chest, I have to take you back to where it all started. I grew up in a small town, the kind where everyone knows everyone, and gossip travels faster than light. My parents were, well, to put it nicely, old school. My dad was the type of man who believed success only came in the form of a white-collar job, a suit, and a briefcase. My mom, she was obsessed with appearances. She cared more about what the neighbors thought than what her own son felt. I was the only child, so naturally, all their hopes and dreams were dumped squarely on me. I was supposed to become a doctor or a lawyer, marry someone respectable, and live a life that made them look good. But life had other plans. I wasn't built for that world. From the moment I could hold a pencil, I was obsessed with design, cars, and technology. I'd spend hours sketching car models, reading automotive magazines, and learning everything about engines. My dad used to say, "You'll never make a living drawing cars, son. Get your head out of the clouds." I remember him snatching my sketches once and throwing them in the trash. That moment burned itself into my memory. I was maybe 12, standing there with my heart in pieces while he walked away like he hadn't just crushed his kid's dream. When I got older, I tried to please them. I went to college for business, something I had zero passion for, just because they thought it sounded respectable. I lasted 2 semesters before I dropped out. I couldn't do it anymore. The pressure, the misery, the constant arguments at home. It all became too much. When I told my parents I was leaving college to start my own online business, my dad didn't even look at me. He just said, "You're not my son if you do this." My mom cried, saying I was ruining my life. I packed my things that night and left home with $600 in my account and nowhere to go. The next few years were rough. I slept on friends' couches, worked part-time at a mechanic shop to afford rent, and spent every waking moment building my business. A small e-commerce brand selling custom car parts and accessories. It started small, but I poured everything I had into it. I learned marketing, design, logistics, all the stuff I was never taught because my parents didn't think it was real work. I failed a dozen times before I found what worked. Slowly but surely, things started to change. I made my first a $10,000 month, then a $50,000. By the time I turned 28, I had built a 6-figure business from scratch. And in that time, guess how many times my parents reached out to me? 0. Not a text. Not a call. Not even on my birthday. They'd basically erased me from the family tree. I'd hear bits and pieces from relatives. That my dad told people I'd run off and ruined my life. Or that my mom said she didn't want to talk about me. It hurt, but I told myself I didn't need them anymore. Then, I met Emily. She changed everything. She was the first person who saw me for who I really was. Not the screw-up, not the dropout, but the guy who never stopped trying. We met at a car show, of all places. She loved cars as much as I did, and she was brilliant. An engineer who designed eco-friendly engines. We hit it off instantly. 2 years later, we were engaged. When it came time to plan the wedding, I hesitated about inviting my parents. Part of me wanted to give them the chance to make things right. Another part of me wanted to protect myself from more disappointment. After talking it over with Emily, I decided to invite them anyway. I wrote a heartfelt letter, explaining everything. That I forgave them, that I wanted them there, that I wanted to start fresh. I sent it, and waited. They never replied. Not a call, not a text, nothing. The day of the wedding came and went, and their seat stayed empty. I can't describe what that felt like. As I stood there, saying my vows, surrounded by friends, I tried not to look at those empty chairs, but they haunted me the entire ceremony. Emily squeezed my hand, and I knew she was thinking the same thing. How could parents choose their pride over their child's happiness? Months passed, and I threw myself into my business again. The company exploded that year. We landed a major deal with a European manufacturer, and suddenly, I was making more money than I'd ever dreamed of. I bought a beautiful house, took Emily on a honeymoon across Europe, and finally decided to treat myself to something I'd wanted since I was a kid, a Porsche 911 Turbo S. I paid cash for it. 135,000, my dream car. Gleaming silver with black leather interior. It was more than just a car. It was proof that I'd made it without anyone's help. A few weeks after getting the car, I went back to my hometown for the first time in years. I wasn't planning to see my parents. Honestly, I just wanted to visit an old friend who still lived there. But fate had other ideas. I stopped at a gas station, and as I was filling up, I heard a familiar voice behind me. Is that really you? I turned around and there they were, my parents. It was surreal. My mom looked older, smaller even, but her eyes widened when she saw the car. My dad's jaw tightened, but I could see the shock in his expression. For a moment, we just stood there in awkward silence. My mom broke it first. That's your car?" she asked. I nodded, keeping my voice calm. "Yeah. I bought it a few weeks ago." She looked like she didn't know what to say. My dad finally spoke, his voice cold but curious. "What do you do now?" I almost laughed. After years of silence, that's what he asked me? Not, "How are you?" Not, "We missed you." But, "What do you do?" I told him I ran a successful automotive business, and his eyebrows shot up. My mom smiled in that fake, proud way she used to when bragging about other people's kids. "Wow," she said. "We had no idea you were doing so well. You should come by the house. Your father and I would love to catch up." Catch up? Really? The same people who ignored my wedding invitation wanted to catch up because I was standing next to a luxury car. The audacity was unreal. I stood there, holding the gas nozzle, and every emotion I'd buried for years came rushing back. The rejection, the loneliness, the endless need for their approval. So that's the situation I was in. Two parents who had cut me out of their lives, suddenly acting like nothing happened because they saw the dollar signs. Before I tell you what I did next, I want you to pause and think. What would you have done in my place? Would you give them another chance, or walk away for good? I'm curious to know, so comment below before I tell you how it ended. Alright, here's what happened. I agreed to visit them. Maybe I just wanted closure. Maybe a part of me still hoped they'd apologize. So later that day, I drove to their house. It felt strange pulling up in front of that old place. The cracked driveway, the faded paint, the same porch where my dad once told me I'd never make it. When I stepped out of the Porsche, my mom was already at the door, waving like I was a long-lost relative returning from war. My dad stood behind her, arms crossed, pretending he wasn't impressed, but his eyes were glued to the car. Inside, everything looked the same. The same pictures on the wall, the same furniture. But the atmosphere was different. Forced, uncomfortable. My mom made tea and started asking question after question about my life, my business, my house. It felt like an interview, not a reunion. My dad, meanwhile, kept trying to steer the conversation toward opportunities. At one point, he said, "You know, your mother and I could use some help fixing up the house. Maybe you could invest a little." That was the moment I realized they didn't come back into my life because they missed me. They came back because they saw me as a paycheck. My chest tightened. I asked, "Is that why you invited me here? Because you want money?" My mom looked offended. "Of course not. We just thought, since you're doing well now, maybe you could help your family." My family. The same family that couldn't even be bothered to attend my wedding. I told them. "You stopped being my family when you turned your backs on me." My dad slammed his hand on the table and said, "Don't talk to your mother like that. We did what we thought was best for you." I stood up, my heart pounding. Ignoring me was best for me. Pretending I didn't exist was best for me. My mom started crying, but I didn't buy it. Not anymore. I told them I wasn't there to be used. I walked out of that house without another word. As I got into my car, my dad followed me outside. He said, "You'll regret this. Family is family." I turned to him and said, "No. Respect is earned. Family doesn't abandon you when you're down." Then I drove off, leaving them standing there, watching the car disappear. For days afterward, I felt empty. You'd think standing up for myself would feel good, and in some ways it did. But it also hurt. I realized I'd been holding on to the hope that one day they'd change. That one day they'd be proud of me for who I really was. But that day never came. I blocked their numbers and focused on my own life. A few months later, I heard from my aunt that my parents had been telling people we'd reconnected, and that I was helping them out financially. I laughed when I heard that. I guess they needed to save face somehow. But deep down I just felt sad, because no amount of success, no fancy car, could fill the void of not having real parents who loved you unconditionally. Emily and I are happier than ever now. We travel, we run the business together, and we recently found out we're expecting our first child. And I've made a promise. I'll never be the kind of parent who lets pride destroy love. I'll be there for my kid no matter what, even if they don't follow the path I imagine for them. Because at the end of the day, that's what being a parent should be about: love, not control. So yeah, my parents ignored my wedding, but when they saw my $135,000 Porsche, they remembered I existed. Funny how that works, isn't it? But I've learned that sometimes, cutting ties isn't about revenge. It's about peace. And peace is something money can't buy. If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Would you have forgiven them or walked away like I did? Let me know in the comments. And if you think I was right to stand my ground, hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. I've got plenty more where this came from. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you all in the next story.